All right, let's dive into the story of a 19th century rabbi, a guy whose radical idea would, well, pretty much change the course of history.
So you've got this guy, a total master of ancient Jewish law, but he's also the architect of a modern movement. How does that even happen? How can one person, so steeped in the old world, become the spark for something so new, so national, and, let's be honest, so controversial?
Well, that's the story of Rabbi Eliyahu Guttmacher, a man who was, in so many ways, a revolutionary in robes, a life just full of paradox.
And to really get a handle on just how radical his ideas were, you've got to understand where he came from. We need to look at the making of the scholar, because his training was about as traditional as it gets. So he's born in Poland way back in 1796, and his path, it seemed totally laid out for him. I mean, by the time he's 19, he's the top student of the legendary Rabbi Akiva Eiger. We're talking one of the greatest legal minds of the entire era. His credentials were, absolutely unimpeachable. This gave him massive authority and respect across the Jewish world.
But here's where the story takes a turn. Guttmacher wasn't just a legal scholar. A chance discovery, something he wasn't even looking for, would send him on this profound spiritual journey, a real mystic awakening.
So picture this. He's deep in his studies, right? In the heart of traditional Jewish law. And he stumbles upon the Zohar, the foundational text of Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah. But here's the kicker. It's not just any copy. It's filled with the secret notes of his own teacher. Can you imagine? This encounter was a total turning point. It pushed him way beyond pure logic and deep into the world of mysticism and Hasidut. And it's from inside this mystical framework that he comes up with something completely revolutionary. You could almost call it a kind of activation code for redemption. Okay, so for centuries, the standard belief, what we call passive messianism, was pretty straightforward. You wait. Redemption is 100% in God's hands. Any attempt by humans to, force the end or speed things up, that was a huge no-no. It was forbidden, even considered dangerous. You just had to wait for the miracle. But Guttmacher, he flips this entire idea on its head. He basically says redemption isn't some surprise package that God just delivers to your doorstep. Nope. He saw it as a project where, some assembly is required. And that assembly, it was a physical job for human beings, specifically farming the land of Israel. Now, this next part is the real kicker. This is the core of his belief. He said the whole redemption process could be started by human action, even if the people weren't spiritually perfect. Think about that. He just took the requirement for spiritual perfection off the table. This was a total game changer because it made the project accessible to everyone, not just some small group of super righteous people.
And he was incredibly precise about it. This wasn't just some vague spiritual idea. He had a number. He literally calculated that it would take exactly 130 Jewish families farming the land of Israel to kickstart the whole process. 130. That's it.
Now, as you can probably guess, not everyone was on board. A lot of other great rabbis thought this was way too radical, even dangerous. But here's what's so interesting. Guttmacher didn't just debate them on points of Jewish law. He went mystical. He basically said they were being blinded by a negative spiritual husk, a klipa, that was overpowering them and stopping them from seeing this great good.
So, Guttmacher wasn't just a guy with an idea. He wasn't just a theorist. He was a man of action, absolutely determined to put his faith to work and turn this mystical vision into a physical reality.
So what did he do? First, he forged an alliance with another rabbi who thought like him, Rabbi Zvi Hirsch Kalischer. Then they put out a public call to action, what's called a kol koreh. They wrote countless letters to raise money and get people on board. And most importantly, they provided real on-the-ground support, logistical and financial, for the very first people who went to settle the land. But it's really crucial to get this next part. He was an activist for sure, but he wasn't a modernist. This was a two-front mission for him. On one hand, he's pushing this radical physical settlement of the land. But on the other, he's fighting tooth and nail against modernizing Jewish education. He insisted that traditional Talmudic study had to remain the absolute foundation. It's that paradox again.
So, okay, why are we talking about a 19th century rabbi today? Why does he still matter? Well, because the seeds of a nation were planted in his ideas. The seeds he planted grew into a massive global movement. Today,
Rabbi Guttmacher is recognized as one of the key heralds of Zionism. You see, his theological argument for active physical redemption, that was the essential groundwork for what would eventually become the religious Zionist movement. He basically gave a whole generation of religious Jews a kind of theological permission slip to go out and become active nation builders.
And his legacy isn't just some abstract idea in a history book. It's a real place on a map. There's a kibbutz in Israel today called Sde Eliyahu that literally means Eliyahu's field. It's a religious kibbutz that is right now living out his vision of combining holy work with working the Holy Land. So in the end, his story leaves us with a pretty powerful question, doesn't it? It makes you wonder, how often in history has a single radical idea born in the mind of one person completely reshaped the destiny of an entire people?